Measuring poverty. Why we need to identify the problem before remedying it.
How should we define and measure poverty today? To measure poverty in our modern society, it is best to consider a combination of minimum economic income and certain capabilities that contribute to adequate quality of life. What do you picture when you hear the word poverty? When you hear the word, you may picture people living on the street, going to soup kitchens, or overall having a lack of material possessions. Material deprivation is certainly a large factor of poverty, but does the condition of experiencing poverty solely refer to material items? We can all agree that every human being has the right to life and to dignity, and poverty, regardless of how exactly it is defined, is an infringement to this right to dignity. As a human race, we have a moral responsibility to ensure that each of our peers maintains their dignity. However, in order to combat poverty, it is necessary to frame what the problem is. Before we talk about various existing ways of measuring poverty, let's define a few key terms. Functionings. Amartya Sen, a Nobel Prize winner and important welfare economist, believes functionings represent parts of the state of a person. Functionings can be thought of as actual beings or doings. These include skills such as reading, writing, and swimming, acts such as consuming 2,000 calories a day, and states of being, such as being in good physical condition or being in a state of good mental health.
Sen also introduces the topic of capabilities. He defines it as a person's ability to do valuable acts or reach valuable states of being. In other words, it is the choice a person receives to perform various functionings. As shown in the circle diagram, capabilities are derived from functionings. For example, a capability includes the freedom of religious exercise. It is the freedom to choose to attend religious ceremonies without being persecuted for it.
Functionings and capabilities are interrelated, however, they are not the same thing. Functionings are the acts themselves, while capabilities are the total possibilities of functionings plus freedom of choice. Think of it this way. A functioning is a singular point. A capability is a collection of points, which a person has the freedom to choose which point they want to go to. Or think of this example. Person A and B are both hungry. Person A is hungry because they are choosing to fast as part of a religious tradition. Person B is hungry because they do not have access to an adequate diet. In this circumstance, person A has capability and person B does not, even though they both have the same functioning. So what do we mean when we say poverty? Part of it is economic or income deprivation. Measuring poverty based on minimum income, which equates to minimum needs, is known as absolute measurement. It can be measured with minimum thresholds or poverty lines. Another way of framing the problem is failure of basic capabilities to reach a certain minimum acceptable level. This is known as relative poverty measure. In addition to basic economic needs, this considers an individual's ability to participate in society. While there is debate about which aspects should be considered when defining poverty, each person who attempts to do so is saying the same thing, that if an individual has factors X, Y, and Z, they should not be considered to be in poverty. However, if they are missing one or more of these factors, say they only have X and Y, then they are considered to be in poverty. Some factors that are universally agreed upon include food, shelter, clothing, and utilities, also known as FCSU. Individuals may argue that other factors in addition to FCSU should be considered in the process of poverty measurement. This is where the various poverty measures come into play.
Let's compare the current methods of measuring poverty. One of the systems used to measure poverty in the United States is called the Official Poverty Measure, or the OPM. It is measured based on the cash income of the blood-related family and family size members. It is calculated by multiplying a family's minimum food cost by 3 to account for other costs, such as utilities and clothes. It is also adjusted for inflation and the number of people in the family. On the right is a chart showing the official poverty threshold, as well as other threshold measurements. Unfortunately, the OPM includes more pros than cons. It is ultimately outdated and doesn't include cohabiting, non-related family members. Also, it doesn't account for geographic costs, which means that someone may live in a way more expensive household but receive the same benefits. It overestimates the amount of disposable income of each person, since the threshold is measured before taxes, healthcare, and childcare are calculated. Another measurement of poverty is called the Supplemental Poverty Measure. It is based on family cash income like the OPM, but is also non-discretionary and includes near cash benefits. This means that taxes, healthcare, and childcare are subtracted before calculating disposable income. The threshold is measured by using comparative costs of FCSU. You multiply the FCSU costs of the 33rd percentile by 1.2 to see where you fall on the poverty measure scale. If your income falls below this calculation, then you are considered to be in poverty. If your income is above this threshold, you're technically not in poverty and may not qualify for certain benefits. Additionally, it adjusts for housing costs based on the location. SPM is adjusted for geographic housing costs, which allows the family to fall on the poverty threshold a lot more accurately. Also, it is adjusted for discretionary spending, non-cash and near-cash benefits such as SNAP and cohabiting couples. However, it is binary, which means that if a person falls $1 above the line, they may not receive the benefits they need. As we can see, based on the chart, SPM has a lot more advantages compared with OPM.
Another method for measuring poverty is the Human Development Index, or HDI. It is rooted in the belief that income is not the only factor of poverty. Rather, life expectancy, education, and quality of life all need to be considered. It is used to compare countries and identify areas that may need support in combating poverty. One shortcoming is that, since it measures the general well-being of a country, it may not be specific enough to accurately depict the variations in quality of life across that country.
Martha Nussbaum, an American philosopher, introduces the capabilities approach. She defines it as the approach to comparative quality of life assessment and to theorizing about basic social justice. It focuses on society giving the choices and freedoms to its citizens so that they could have a good quality of life. It doesn't just measure the economic status and the well-being of the family, but the opportunities they are able to receive. She also believes in a pluralist value where all 10 of her potential capabilities must be met in order to have an appropriate quality of life. A tragic choice, such as choosing to send a child to school instead of going to work, shouldn't have to be made. Here's a list of Nussbaum's 10 central capabilities. They include life, bodily health, bodily integrity, sense of imagination and thought, emotions, practical reason, affiliation, other species, play, and control over one's environment.
Quote, to the average American, the word poverty implies significant material deprivation and inability to provide a family with adequate nutritious food, reasonable shelter, and clothing. Robert Rector, Senior Research Fellow at Heritage Foundation. Rector believes in an extreme poverty standard, that if one's basic needs are met, then they should be considered above the poverty line. Proponents of this measure argue that even the OPM, which is only 3 times minimum food cost, overestimates poverty in America. Rector also believes that possession of a certain amount of amenities, such as a refrigerator and microwave, means that a person should not be considered as experiencing poverty. This approach directly equates material possessions to quality of life. By solely considering amenities and minimum income, the full picture is not captured. The cheapest available housing oftentimes already comes with amenities. People may still be struggling to afford rent or even to fill the fridge with food. The majority of Americans who have not lived in the conditions of poverty should not be the ones to determine what is quote-unquote enough to get along and to have a good quality of life. This extreme poverty measure completely neglects an essential human right, freedom of choice. An individual can possess a microwave and refrigerator and yet not have agency over their lives based on limited external resources. So should this person truly be considered not experiencing poverty? Our solution. We've concluded that the most ideal method of measuring poverty would be a combination of the SPM and capabilities approach. Why SPM? It's a baseline measurement that both gives a tangible monetary measurement and accounts for discretionary spending. At the end of the day, cash is a universal resource. It is what is ultimately needed to fulfill one's needs as well as contribute to their capabilities. However, we believe that the discretionary spending cost should be increased. Rather than multiply the 33rd percentile by 1.2, giving a 20% budget for discretionary costs, we propose an increase in that percentage, say for now, 40%.
We believe that the necessary capabilities include physical and mental health, social inclusion, freedom of expression, and leisure. Additionally, we believe that the qualitative interviews should be conducted in communities. Questions will ask participants to assess their access to the 4 necessary capabilities. When we receive feedback from these communities, we will be able to calculate the percentage of discretionary costs and see which government programs are needed to expand in order to meet those specific capability needs.
Here's an example. Charlie's family is considered to be above the OPM threshold because their FCSU needs are met. However, Charlie has to walk to and from school, he can't participate in sports or clubs after school, and because of this, he's unwelcomed by his peers. He also doesn't have access to technology such as a laptop, and he has undiagnosed and untreated depression. In addition to this, he feels unable to speak up at home and in school. According to the combination approach, Charlie is lacking the minimum capabilities of good mental health, leisure, social inclusion, and freedom of expression. Although he is not considered to be in poverty by the OPM, we believe he should be considered in poverty based on his lack of capabilities according to the combination approach, and therefore he should receive more resources to improve his situation. We should conduct a qualitative interview with his family to be able to fully understand how many resources he needs to meet his capability needs.
This combination approach provides a realistic monetary value that ensures that basic needs are met and there's a high enough discretionary budget to account for central capabilities. We believe this method will contribute the most to adequate quality of life.